London, May 1816. The chandeliers of Lady Sefton's grand ball blazed with the light of 1,000 wax candles, casting their golden glow across the polished floors where the most eligible young ladies of the season gathered like rare flowers awaiting selection. The air carried the mingled scents of beeswax, expensive perfumes, and the particular tension that accompanied a presentation ball where fortunes could be made or lost with a single dance. William Talbot, the 6th Duke of Morland, stood near the entrance beside his mother, the Dowager Duchess Honoria, feeling as he always did at these events. He felt like a prize stallion being paraded before prospective buyers. At 24, he had held his title for 6 years, inheriting it upon his father's sudden death from a fever that had swept through their country estate with devastating efficiency. In those 6 years, he had not made a single significant decision without his mother's guidance. Lady Katrina MacLeish stood on his other side, her practical features arranged in an expression of mild interest as she surveyed the room. She was his mother's choice, a cousin from Scotland whose family controlled valuable lands in the Highlands. Their understanding had been arranged 2 months prior, and William had accepted it as he accepted everything his mother proposed, with dutiful resignation. It was then that his gaze drifted across the crowded ballroom and found her. She stood near the far wall, half hidden by an arrangement of potted ferns, laughing at something her companion had whispered. Her hair was dark as a raven's wing, swept up in a simple style that somehow appeared more elegant than the elaborate coiffures surrounding her. Her skin held the luminous quality of fine porcelain, and when she turned slightly, William caught a glimpse of eyes so extraordinary in their violet hue that he momentarily forgot how to breathe. The sensation was entirely foreign to him. His heart, which had beaten with such steady reliability through 26 years of existence, suddenly seemed to have developed an alarming irregularity. His mouth went dry. His palms grew damp within his evening gloves. "William." His mother's voice cut through his reverie like a blade through silk. "You are staring. It is most unbecoming." He forced his attention back to the immediate vicinity, where Lady Katrina was speaking with an elderly dowager about the weather in Edinburgh. His mother's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, had followed the direction of his previous gaze. "Who is that young lady?" William asked, attempting to sound merely curious. "The one in the cream-colored gown near the ferns." The Dowager Duchess's lips compressed into a thin line. "Miss Lydia Fairmont, the daughter of some minor baronet from Kent, modest estate, smaller dowry, entirely unsuitable for anyone of consequence." Her tone made clear that the subject was closed, but the subject, for William, had only just opened. The evening progressed as such evenings always did. He danced the first set with Lady Katrina, executing the figures with mechanical precision while his thoughts wandered persistently to the girl in cream. He danced with Lady Pemberton's eldest daughter, whose conversation consisted entirely of observations about the weather and the quality of the refreshments. He danced with Miss Arabella Whitcomb, who giggled at everything he said, whether or not it warranted amusement. All the while, his gaze kept returning to Miss Lydia Fairmont. She danced twice, both times with gentlemen of no particular distinction. Between dances, she stood with her companion, an older woman who appeared to be her chaperone, observing the festivities with an expression of quiet wonder rather than the calculating assessment he observed on most young ladies' faces. When the orchestra struck up a waltz, she did not join the dancers, instead retreating further into her alcove of ferns as though seeking refuge from the swirling couples. William found himself moving toward her before conscious thought could intervene. "Miss Fairmont." She startled at his address, her violet eyes widening as she took in his appearance. He was tall, he knew, with features his mother assured him were handsome enough to compensate for any deficiency of charm. At this moment, however, he felt as awkward as a schoolboy at his first assembly. "Your Grace." She dropped into a curtsy so deep it bordered on excessive, clearly flustered by his unexpected attention. "Forgive me for intruding upon your solitude," he said, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice when everything inside him trembled. "I wondered if you might do me the honor of this waltz." Her eyes searched his face, looking for what he could not say. Mockery, perhaps, or some cruel jest at her expense. Finding neither, she glanced toward her chaperone, who was currently cornered by a talkative acquaintance near the pillar and had not noticed the Duke's approach. "I would be honored, Your Grace." Her hand in his felt like coming home to a place he had never known existed. The music swelled around them as they joined the other couples, and William discovered that leading Miss Lydia Fairmont through a waltz required none of the mechanical concentration he had expended on his previous partners. Their movements flowed together as naturally as water finding its course. "You do not seem to be enjoying the ball," he ventured, when the silence between them had stretched long enough to require breaking. "On the contrary, Your Grace, I find it quite overwhelming." A hint of a smile curved her lips. "I am not accustomed to such grandeur. My family's entertainments in Kent tend toward more modest affairs." "And do you prefer modest affairs?" She considered the question with a seriousness that surprised him. Most young ladies would have offered a coy response designed to flatter. Miss Fairmont appeared to be actually thinking. "I prefer genuine ones," she said finally. "Whether grand or modest matters less than whether the people present are truly enjoying themselves or merely performing enjoyment for the benefit of others." William felt something shift in his chest, a seismic shift of feeling he had no framework to understand. "And which do you observe here tonight?" "A great deal of performance, I fear." Her eyes met his with startling directness. "Though there are exceptions. The elderly couple near the refreshment table, for instance. They have been married 40 years at least, and still look at each other as though seeing something wonderful. And the young lady in blue by the pillar, the one pretending not to watch the officer in regimentals. She is experiencing genuine emotion, though I suspect she wishes she were not." He found himself laughing, an unfamiliar sound even to his own ears. "You are remarkably observant, Miss Fairmont. My mother always said I notice too much and speak of it too freely. It is not a quality society generally prizes in young ladies." "Society," William said, and was surprised by the bitterness that crept into his voice. "Prizes a great many qualities I find tiresome, and dismisses a great many others I find admirable." She studied him then, her violet eyes thoughtful. "That is a surprising sentiment from a duke." "Dukes are permitted to have surprising sentiments. It is one of the few privileges of rank that appeals to me." The waltz drew to a close, and William became aware that they had attracted attention. His mother's gaze bore into him from across the room like twin daggers of disapproval. Lady Katrina watched with an expression of mild curiosity, and scattered throughout the assembly, fans had risen to hide whispered observations about the Duke of Moreland dancing with an unknown nobody from Kent. He should return Miss Fairmont to her chaperone. He should resume his position at his mother's side. He should remember his duty, his understanding with Lady Katrina, his place in the rigid hierarchy that governed their world. Instead, he said, "Would you walk with me to the refreshment table? I find myself suddenly parched." Her hesitation was brief, but noticeable. "Your Grace, I am not certain that would be wise." "Wisdom," he replied, "is another quality society prizes that I increasingly find tiresome." A small laugh escaped her, and the sound of it filled him with inexplicable joy. She placed her hand on his arm, and they made their way through the crowded ballroom together. At the refreshment table, William procured 2 glasses of lemonade and steered Miss Fairmont toward a relatively secluded corner where conversation might be possible without the entire assembly straining to overhear. "Tell me about Kent," he said, "about your family's modest affairs and your mother's opinions on speaking freely." "There is little to tell that would interest a duke." She sipped her lemonade, her cheeks flushed pink from dancing or from something else entirely. "My father is Sir Edward Fairmont. Our estate is called Rosefield Manor, though there are few roses and the manor itself is rather small. I have one brother who is away at Cambridge and a younger sister still in the schoolroom. My mother passed 3 years ago, and since then, my aunt has served as my chaperone and companion. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you. The words held genuine feeling rather than rote politeness. My mother was a remarkable woman. She read poetry to us every evening and encouraged us to form our own opinions about everything from politics to pudding. My father adored her quite desperately. He has not been the same since she left us. William thought of his own father, who had existed primarily as a dim presence overshadowed by his mother's forceful personality. The late Duke had agreed with everything his wife proposed, validated every decision she made, and departed this life, having never, as far as William could recall, expressed an independent thought. What was her favorite poet? He asked. Miss Fairmont's face lit with the question. Wordsworth. She could recite entire passages of his lyrical ballads from memory. But she also loved the older poets, Milton and Donne, and the newer ones whose work we could find in the circulating library. I wandered lonely as a cloud, William quoted softly, that floats on high o'er vales and hills. Her eyes widened. You know Wordsworth? I know him well, though I am forbidden to admit as much in polite company. Forbidden? By whom? By everyone who matters. Dukes are expected to discuss hunting and horses and the management of estates. Poetry is considered an unsuitable interest for a gentleman of my rank. That seems remarkably foolish. It is. But foolishness in service of convention is apparently exempt from criticism. They talked then, as William had never talked with anyone. About poetry and nature, about the sound of rain on windows, and the particular quality of light in autumn. Miss Fairmont spoke of the walks she took through the Kent countryside, of the books she read by candlelight when the house grew quiet, of her dreams of traveling to the Lake District to see the landscapes that had inspired so much beautiful verse. William spoke of things he had never spoken of his loneliness in the great house at Moorland Park, of the way his mother's constant presence felt like a weight pressing down upon his chest, of his secret conviction that there must be more to existence than duty and obligation, and the endless performance of social expectations. The conversation might have continued indefinitely if not for the intrusion that shattered everything. William, his mother's voice preceded her arrival like the rumble of thunder before a storm. You have monopolized this young lady's attention quite long enough. Lady Katrina is waiting for you. The Dowager Duchess did not acknowledge Miss Fairmont with so much as a glance. Her attention focused entirely on her son, her displeasure evident in every rigid line of her posture. Of course, mother. William set down his glass, acutely aware of Miss Fairmont's sudden stillness beside him. Miss Fairmont, thank you for the pleasure of your company this evening. The pleasure was mine, Your Grace. He wanted to say more. He wanted to arrange another meeting, to secure her permission to call, to do any of the 100 things that propriety allowed a gentleman who wished to pursue a lady's acquaintance. But his mother's hand closed around his arm like a vice, and he found himself being steered away before any such words could form. From across the ballroom, he watched as his mother returned. He watched as she approached Miss Fairmont, who stood alone now, her chaperone having been engaged by another guest. He watched as his mother leaned close and spoke words he could not hear. He watched as Miss Fairmont's face crumpled, as tears began to stream down her cheeks, as she turned and fled the ballroom entirely. William pulled free of Lady Katrina's tepid conversation and strode toward his mother, who was returning with an expression of grim satisfaction. What did you say to her? The Dowager Duchess arched one elegant eyebrow. To whom? You know perfectly well to whom. Miss Fairmont, what did you say? I simply reminded the girl of her place. His mother's voice held no trace of remorse. She was clearly harboring inappropriate designs on you, throwing herself at you in that shameless manner. I merely clarified that such behavior would not be tolerated. Something hot and unfamiliar rose in William's chest. Anger, he realized. He was actually angry at his mother. The sensation was so novel, it momentarily robbed him of speech. She was not throwing herself at anyone, he managed finally. I approached her. I asked her to dance. I invited her to take refreshment. Then you displayed poor judgment, which I have now corrected. You had no right. The words hung in the air between them like a declaration of war. In 6 and 20 years of existence, William had never defied his mother, had never questioned her decisions, never challenged her authority, never suggested that her judgment might be anything other than infallible. The Dowager Duchess's eyes narrowed. I had every right. I am your mother, and I have spent my entire life protecting you from exactly this sort of mistake. That girl is nobody, William. A nobody from nowhere with nothing to recommend her but a pretty face and a talent for manipulation. You will forget her, return your attention to Lady Katrina, and thank me in due course for saving you from a disastrous entanglement. William looked at his mother, truly looked at her, and saw for the first time the iron will that had shaped his entire existence. He saw the control she had wielded like a weapon, the way she had pruned and molded him into precisely the man she wished him to be. A man who never questioned, never rebelled, never wanted anything that was not first approved and sanctioned by her judgment. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I need some air." He found Miss Fairmont in the garden, seated on a stone bench beneath a trellis of climbing roses. The moonlight caught the tears on her cheeks, turning them to silver. She did not look up at his approach, and when she spoke, her voice emerged small and broken. "Please go away, Your Grace. Your mother has made her feelings quite clear. I should never have spoken with you, never have danced with you, never have allowed myself to forget, even for a moment, the gulf between us." William sat down beside her on the bench. Propriety be damned. "What did she say to you?" "It does not matter. It matters to me." Miss Fairmont finally raised her eyes to his, and the pain he saw there made something inside him crack open. "She said I was grasping and common, that I was throwing myself at you shamelessly, offering what no respectable woman offers, that I was a vulgar social climber attempting to trap you through feminine wiles." Her voice wavered, but did not break. "She told me to stay away from you, to stop degrading myself with such transparent desperation." The hot anger in William's chest intensified. "She had no right to speak to you that way. She had every right. She is your mother, and she is protecting you." Miss Fairmont rose from the bench, wrapping her arms around herself as though chilled. "I was inappropriate, Your Grace. I forgot myself in the pleasure of our conversation. I allowed myself to imagine for just a moment that such boundaries did not exist. Your mother reminded me that they do, and she was correct to do so." She was not correct. She was. Miss Fairmont turned to face him, her violet eyes resolute despite the tears that continued to fall. "You are a duke engaged to marry your cousin. I am nobody from nowhere, as your mother so accurately observed. Whatever passed between us tonight was fantasy, and it is better that fantasy ends now, before either of us becomes too attached to its illusion." "I am not engaged," William heard himself say. "There is merely an understanding I never truly wanted." "Then I am sorry for that, but it does not change the fundamental truth of our situations." She took a step backward, increasing the distance between them. "Please return to the ball, Your Grace. Your mother will be looking for you." "I do not care what my mother is doing." The words surprised them both. Miss Fairmont's eyes widened, and William felt something unlock inside him, some cage that had held him prisoner for his entire life. "Miss Fairmont, Lydia." He spoke her name like a prayer. "I have known you for a matter of hours, and yet I feel more myself in your company than I have felt in 6 and 20 years of existence. What my mother said to you was cruel and false. You are not grasping or common or desperate. You are kind and genuine and good. You saw me, truly saw me, for perhaps the first time anyone has ever bothered to look. Your Grace, please do not say such things. I am saying them because they are true, because you deserve to hear them, because my mother had no right to make you doubt your own worth for even a moment. He reached for her hand, and she did not pull away. Her fingers trembled within his grasp, small and cold in the evening air. I know our acquaintance has been brief, he continued. I know there are obstacles between us that seem insurmountable, but I cannot simply pretend this evening did not happen. I cannot return to Lady Katrina and the life my mother has planned for me, as though I did not, for one shining moment, glimpse something infinitely more precious. And what would you have us do? Her voice was barely a whisper now. Your mother has made her feelings clear. She will never accept me. Then I will make her accept you. William straightened, feeling a determination flow through him that was entirely new and not unpleasant. Miss Fairmont, would you permit me to call upon you tomorrow, to pay court to you properly in the full view of society so that no one can ever again suggest your behavior was anything other than perfectly respectable? Your mother will be furious. Yes, she will. She will do everything in her power to prevent this. She will try. Miss Fairmont searched his face in the moonlight, looking for the conviction he knew must be visible there. You barely know me, Your Grace. What if you discover, upon further acquaintance, that I am not worth the trouble I will certainly cause you? Then I will count myself fortunate for the discovery. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. But I do not believe that will happen. I believe that further acquaintance will only confirm what I already suspect, that you are the most extraordinary woman I have ever had the privilege of meeting. She smiled then, a small, tremulous expression that nonetheless lit her entire face with beauty. You are quite mad, Your Grace. Undoubtedly. He smiled back at her. Will you permit my call? I will. She withdrew her hand from his, though the movement seemed reluctant. My aunt has taken rooms in Bloomsbury for the season. The address is number 12 Montague Street. Tomorrow at 3, then. Tomorrow at 3. They returned to the ballroom separately, propriety demanding at least that minimal concession. William found his mother and Lady Katrina near the entrance, both watching his return with expressions ranging from disapproval to curiosity. Where have you been? The Dowager Duchess demanded. Lady Katrina has been waiting to bid you good evening. Forgive me, cousin. William bowed to Lady Katrina with genuine warmth. I needed a moment to collect my thoughts. The evening has been rather overwhelming. Lady Katrina regarded him with those practical Scottish eyes that seemed to see more than she ever revealed. Think nothing of it, William. We shall speak again soon. The carriage ride home was conducted in ominous silence. The Dowager Duchess stared out the window, her profile rigid with suppressed anger. William watched the streets of London pass by and thought about violet eyes and Wordsworth, and the feeling of a small cold hand trembling in his grasp. It was not until they had entered the foyer of Moorland House that his mother finally spoke. You will not call upon that girl. I have already made the arrangement. Then you will send word tomorrow morning that you are indisposed. I will do no such thing. The Dowager Duchess turned to face him, her expression thunderous in the candlelight. William Arthur Edward Talbot, you will obey me in this. That Fairmont creature is entirely unsuitable. She has nothing to recommend her, nothing to offer you, nothing that will advance our family's interests. You have an understanding with your cousin, an arrangement that will unite two great estates and secure the family's position for generations. Lady Katrina and I have no affection for each other. Affection is not required for a successful marriage. I had no particular affection for your father when we wed, and our union was entirely satisfactory. William thought of his father, that silent shadow who had drifted through the corners of his childhood. Thought of the emptiness in the man's eyes, the way he had seemed to fade a little more each year until there was nothing left to fade. "I do not wish for a satisfactory union," he said quietly. "I wish for something more. What you wish is irrelevant. You are a duke, and you have responsibilities that outweigh any personal preferences. I have spent 24 years preparing you for your position. I have sacrificed everything to ensure your success, managed your estates, maintained your social standing, guarded your reputation against every threat. And this is how you repay me? By chasing after some common nobody who caught your eye at a ball? Miss Fairmont is the daughter of a baronet. She is hardly common. She is nothing." The Dowager Duchess's voice rose to a near shriek. "Do you understand me, William? She is nothing, and she will bring nothing to this family but scandal and embarrassment. I forbid this courtship. I absolutely forbid it." William looked at his mother and saw, perhaps for the first time, the woman she truly was. Not the wise guardian he had always believed her to be, but a controller, a manipulator, someone whose love was contingent upon absolute obedience. "I am sorry, Mother," he said, and meant it. "But I am no longer a child to be forbidden. I am the Duke of Moreland, and I will decide whom I court." He turned and walked up the stairs to his chambers, leaving his mother standing alone in the foyer, her face contorted with a fury he had never seen and did not particularly wish to see again. The following weeks unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance, every step watched and scrutinized by the assembled ton. William called upon Miss Fairmont as promised, finding her in the modest drawing room of her aunt's rented lodgings, her violet eyes wide with surprise that he had actually appeared. They talked of poetry and philosophy, of the beauties of the natural world and the constraints of social expectation. Miss Fairmont, he discovered, possessed a mind as beautiful as her face, full of unexpected depths and surprising perspectives. She questioned things he had always accepted, challenged assumptions he had never examined, and made him feel more alive with every conversation than he had felt in his entire previous existence. He brought her gifts, small tokens chosen with care rather than expense. A volume of Wordsworth's verses inscribed with a line from the poem that had first connected them. A watercolor of the Lake District purchased from a struggling artist he had encountered on Bond Street. A single perfect rose from the gardens at Moreland Park, pressed between the pages of a book of sonnets. Each gift made her smile that luminous smile, and each smile made William more certain that he had found something precious beyond measure. The afternoon when he arrived with the volume of poetry remained vivid in his memory. Lydia had received him in the small drawing room, her aunt busying herself with needlework in the corner to provide the requisite chaperonage. When she opened the tissue paper wrapping and saw what lay within, her violet eyes had filled with tears. "You remembered," she whispered, tracing the gold lettering on the spine. "I remember everything you say. Every word, every thought, every observation that reveals the extraordinary mind behind those beautiful eyes." Her aunt had coughed pointedly at the intimacy of his tone, and both had laughed, the moment broken but not diminished. These small intimacies accumulated like coins in a treasure chest, each one adding to the growing wealth of their connection. Lady Katrina MacLeish's departure from London had been handled with remarkable grace. William had called upon her at her family's townhouse, prepared to explain, to apologize, to somehow make her understand that he had never intended to hurt her. She had stopped him before he could begin. "Spare yourself the discomfort, William. I have known for weeks that your heart was engaged elsewhere." Her practical Scottish features had softened with something like sympathy. "I am not wounded, merely observant. You look at Miss Fairmont the way I have always hoped someone might look at me. Katrina, I am truly sorry. Do not be sorry. Be happy." She had offered her hand with the brisk efficiency he had come to associate with her. "I am returning to Edinburgh in the morning. I shall tell our families that we released each other from the understanding by mutual agreement. It is the truth after all, if somewhat simplified. You are remarkably generous. I am remarkably practical. There is no benefit in competing with a ghost, and Miss Fairmont has clearly already taken up residence in whatever heart you possess." A small smile had crossed her face. "I do hope you find the happiness you seek, William. Truly, I do." They walked in Hyde Park during the fashionable hour, Miss Fairmont on his arm, her aunt trailing at a respectable distance. They attended the theater together, sharing a box that drew whispers from every corner of the auditorium. They danced at balls and assemblies, always the two dances that propriety permitted, each one feeling more natural than the last. The ton watched and wondered. The Duke of Moreland, that most dutiful of sons, was openly courting a nobody from Kent. His mother's fury was an open secret, discussed in every drawing room and at every card party. Lady Katrina MacLeish had returned to Scotland, releasing William from their understanding with a graciousness that made the whispers even louder. The Dowager Duchess did not accept defeat gracefully. She spread rumors about the Fairmont family, suggesting financial impropriety and questionable morals. She poisoned the ears of hostesses and patronesses, causing invitations to dry up and doors to close. She made cutting remarks in public, disparaging Miss Fairmont's appearance, her breeding, her obvious desperation to catch a duke. The cuts direct began appearing with alarming frequency. Ladies who had been cordial to Miss Fairmont now turned their backs when she approached. Gentlemen who had sought her hand in dance now claimed previous engagements. The social world that had briefly opened to her was slamming shut with vicious efficiency. One particularly painful incident occurred at Lady Pemberton's afternoon tea. Lydia had been invited before the full weight of the Dowager Duchess's campaign had become apparent, and she arrived expecting the usual bland pleasantries that characterized such affairs. Instead, she found herself seated alone at a table while conversation swirled around her as though she were invisible. When she attempted to engage Mrs. Hartley, whose daughter she had met at a previous gathering, the woman looked through her as though she had not spoken. "I am afraid that seat is taken," Lady Bancroft announced loudly when Lydia moved to join a more welcoming-looking group. "We are expecting Lady Ashton momentarily." The seat remained conspicuously empty for the remainder of the afternoon. Lydia departed early, her head held high, despite the tears that threatened. William heard of the incident from Lord Merrywell, whose wife had been present and had been genuinely appalled by the cruelty on display. "Your mother has thoroughly poisoned the well," Merrywell reported grimly. "Half of society believes Miss Fairmont to be some sort of scheming adventuress, and the other half is too afraid of the Dowager Duchess to show any kindness." William's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "This cannot continue." "Then you must do something to stop it. Something public. Something undeniable. Society needs to understand that Miss Fairmont has your full support and that opposition to her is opposition to you." Through it all, Lydia maintained her dignity. She did not complain, did not weep in public, did not give her tormentors the satisfaction of seeing her broken. But William saw the strain in her eyes, saw the effort it cost her to hold her head high when everywhere she turned, she met hostility and contempt. One evening at Richmond, where William had arranged a private picnic near the Thames with proper chaperonage, he finally spoke of what had been building in his heart. They sat in a small boat on the water, William rowing while Lydia trailed her fingers through the cool river. The sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, and the world felt very far away. "Lydia." He shipped the oars, allowing the boat to drift in the gentle current. "I need to tell you something." She looked up at him, her violet eyes wary. "That sounds rather ominous." "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and true and terrifying. Lydia's hand stilled in the water, droplets falling from her fingertips like liquid jewels. "William, please." Her voice trembled. "Do not say such things if you do not mean them. I have never meant anything more in my entire life." He reached for her hand, drawing it into his own. "I know our courtship has been difficult. I know my mother has made your life a misery. I know the whole of society believes you are grasping and common and unsuitable, but I have never been more certain of anything than I am certain of this. I love you, Lydia Fairmont. I love your kindness and your courage and the way you see beauty in things everyone else overlooks. I love the sound of your laugh and the light in your eyes when you speak of poetry. I love that you challenged me to be more than what I was raised to be. And I love that you make me want to be worthy of that challenge. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she was smiling. I love you too, William. I have loved you almost from the moment you quoted Wordsworth at me in that wretched ballroom. But your mother will never accept this. She will never stop fighting against us. Then let her fight. I am done living my life according to her wishes. He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. When I am with you, I feel like I can finally breathe. Like I am finally the person I was meant to be, rather than the shadow my mother created. I do not know how to make her accept you, Lydia, but I know that I cannot give you up. I will not give you up, no matter what she does. Even if it means losing your family? If my family cannot accept the woman I love, then they were never truly my family to begin with. Lydia leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tender and desperate, full of hope and fear and a love that had grown strong despite every obstacle placed in its path. When they finally parted, both breathless, the last of the sunlight was fading from the sky. "We should return," Lydia whispered. "My aunt will be wondering what has become of us." "Before we do, I have something to ask you." William's heart pounded so violently he was certain she could hear it. "I know this is not the proper way. I should speak to your father first, obtain his permission, make arrangements through proper channels, but I cannot wait another moment." He took both her hands in his. "Lydia Fairmont, will you marry me?" Her answer was immediate and unwavering. "Yes, yes, William, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her again, pulling her close in the cramped confines of the boat, heedless of propriety or the distant figure of her aunt on the shore. For one perfect moment, nothing existed but the two of them, and the love that had grown between them like a flower pushing through stone. The journey back to shore was made in contented silence, their hands intertwined across the space between them. Lydia's aunt, who had watched the proceedings from a discreet distance, wore an expression that suggested she knew exactly what had transpired, but was determined to feign polite ignorance. "I shall write to your father tomorrow," William said, as he handed Lydia down from the boat, "to formally request his blessing. He will give it gladly. He has spoken of nothing but your virtues since you began calling." "I have virtues?" "Many of them, apparently. My father believes you to be kind, honorable, and entirely too good for the daughter of a minor baronet." "Your father is mistaken in that last assessment. You are far too good for me. Shall we argue about who is more undeserving all the way back to London?" "I believe we shall. It seems a fitting occupation for an engaged couple." The formal request was sent, the formal blessing received, and the announcement prepared for the papers. Sir Edward Fairmont arrived in London to meet his future son-in-law properly, and the two men discovered an immediate rapport based on their shared appreciation for literature and their shared bafflement at the elaborate rituals of society. "You shall make my daughter happy," Sir Edward said over brandy on the evening before the announcement appeared. It was not a question. "I shall spend every day of my life trying to deserve her. That is all any father can ask." The older man's eyes grew misty. "Her mother would have approved of you, I think. She always said that Lydia needed someone who would see her true worth, not merely her pretty face or her modest dowry. Miss Fairmont is worth more than any dowry could measure." "Then we understand each other perfectly." The announcement of their engagement sent shockwaves through society. The Duke of Moreland, that paragon of duty and obedience, had defied his formidable mother to propose to a girl of no particular consequence. The gossips could speak of nothing else. The Dowager Duchess summoned William to her private sitting room the morning after the announcement appeared in the papers. "You have humiliated me beyond recovery." Her voice was ice, her face a mask of controlled fury. "After everything I have done for you, after every sacrifice I have made, this is how you repay me? Mother, I am sorry that my engagement disappoints you. But I love Lydia, and I intend to marry her. You will do no such thing. I will." The Dowager Duchess rose from her chair, her tall figure seeming to grow even taller with rage. "Listen to me carefully, William. If you persist in this madness, I will cut you off entirely. I will disinherit you, lock the estate accounts, refuse to associate with you in any capacity. You will be dead to me." "You cannot disinherit me. The title and entailed properties pass to me by law. But the unentailed properties, the London townhouse, the Moreland jewels, the vast investments your father left in my control, those I can withhold," she smiled coldly. "And I will. If you marry that girl, you will be land-rich but cash-poor, unable to maintain your estates. Let us see how long your precious love survives when the roof leaks and the servants remain unpaid." William felt the weight of her threat pressing down upon him. The townhouse had been his family's London residence for generations. The Moreland jewels were legendary, heirlooms dating back centuries. The investments represented the liquidity needed to run the dukedom. But then he thought of Lydia, of her quiet strength and her gentle wisdom, of the way she made him feel whole for the first time in his life. "Then I will have my title and my leaking roofs," he said quietly. "And I will count myself fortunate beyond measure, because I will also have her." The Dowager Duchess stared at him as though seeing a stranger. "You have lost your mind." "No, Mother. For the first time in my life, I have found it." He turned and left her sitting room, his steps steady even as his heart raced with the magnitude of what he had done. He had defied his mother. He had chosen love over duty, happiness over security, freedom over control. And he had never felt more certain of anything. Lady Genevieve Hartington's summer ball was the event of the season, an elaborate affair held in her magnificent townhouse overlooking Grosvenor Square. Everyone who was anyone would be in attendance, and the engagement of the Duke of Moreland to Miss Lydia Fairmont was certain to be the primary topic of conversation. William and Lydia arrived together, her hand on his arm, her cream-colored gown simple but elegant beside his formal evening attire. The whispers began the moment they entered, a susurrant wave of commentary that followed them through the crowded rooms. "Pay them no mind," William murmured against her ear. "They will find something else to gossip about within the fortnight." "I know." She smiled up at him, though tension showed in the set of her shoulders. "I am simply grateful to be here with you." They danced the first set together, moving through the figures with the natural grace their weeks of practice had developed. Other couples gave them wide berth, some from courtesy and others from the desire to avoid association with the objects of the Dowager Duchess's displeasure. When the dance ended, William escorted Lydia toward the refreshment table. They had nearly reached their destination when a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. The Dowager Duchess Honoria had arrived. She swept through the crowd like a ship in full sail, her silver gown catching the candlelight, her expression one of cold determination. The guests parted before her, whispers rising in her wake until she stood directly in front of Lydia. "Miss Fairmont." The Dowager Duchess's voice carried across the suddenly silent ballroom. "Or should I say, the future Duchess of Moreland, since you have apparently succeeded in your campaign to ensnare my foolish son with your feminine wiles." Lydia paled, but stood her ground. "Your Grace. Tell me, did you plan this seduction from the beginning?" The Dowager Duchess stepped closer, her voice rising so that every guest could hear. "Did you research which gentleman would be wealthiest and most easily manipulated? Did you practice that innocent expression in the mirror before deploying it? Or did you simply get lucky, stumbling upon a duke stupid enough to fall for such transparent tricks?" The crowd pressed closer, hungry for scandal, eager to witness the complete destruction of Miss Lydia Fairmont. Your Grace, I assure you that my feelings for your son are genuine. Lydia's voice trembled, but did not break. I never sought to trap or manipulate him. Of course you did not. You merely threw yourself at him at every opportunity, monopolized his attention, turned his head with pretty smiles and strategic tears. The Dowager Duchess's lips curled with contempt. You may have fooled my son, but you have not fooled me. I know exactly what you are, Miss Fairmont. You are a grasping, common social climber, willing to degrade yourself to trap a title. You are not worthy of my son. You are not worthy of this family, and when William finally comes to his senses, as he inevitably will, you will be discarded like the cheap trinket you are. Tears were streaming down Lydia's face now, her composure finally breaking under the relentless assault. The crowd watched in fascinated horror, no one moving to defend her, everyone waiting to see how much further the Dowager Duchess would go. Then William stepped forward. He had been frozen throughout his mother's tirade, shock and disbelief rendering him temporarily immobile. But seeing Lydia's tears, seeing her standing alone against his mother's cruelty while an entire ballroom watched and did nothing, something inside him finally snapped. Enough, Mother. That is enough. The words rang through the silent room like a thunderclap. Every head turned toward him. Every eye widened with surprise at hearing the famously obedient Duke of Moreland speak to his mother in such a tone. William. The Dowager Duchess turned her cold gaze upon him. This does not concern you. This concerns me entirely. He stepped between his mother and Lydia, his back to the woman he loved, his face to the woman who had raised him. You will not speak to my future wife this way. You will not humiliate her. You will not question her character or her integrity. I am your mother, and she is to be my wife. William's voice rose, filling the ballroom with its unfamiliar authority. I have been your obedient son for 24 years, Mother. I have accepted your guidance, followed your instructions, deferred to your judgment in all things. But this ends now. How dare you speak to me in this manner? How dare you treat the woman I love like dirt beneath your feet? He stepped closer to his mother, his tall frame suddenly seeming to tower over her. Lydia Fairmont is kind and genuine and good. She did not chase me. She did not manipulate me. She did not scheme to trap me. I fell in love with her because she sees me as a person, not as an extension of your ambitions. Because she makes me feel alive. Because she is the first person in my entire life who has asked what I want rather than telling me what I should want. The Dowager Duchess's face had gone pale with shock and fury. You are making a fool of yourself before all of society. Then let society think me a fool. William turned to face the assembled guests, his voice carrying to every corner of the magnificent room. Let everyone here know that I love Lydia Fairmont with all my heart. That I intend to marry her regardless of my mother's objections. That I would rather be a fool in love than a dutiful son trapped in a loveless arrangement of my mother's devising. He turned back to Lydia, taking her trembling hands in his own. I am sorry for my mother's cruelty. I am sorry it took me so long to stand up to her. But I am standing now, Lydia. I am standing for you, for us, for the life I want to build together. William. Her voice was thick with tears, but her violet eyes shone with something that looked remarkably like hope. You do not have to do this. I do have to do this. I should have done it weeks ago. He raised her hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to each one in full view of the assembled company. I love you, Lydia Fairmont. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And I do not care what my mother thinks, or what society thinks, or what anyone thinks except you. Will you still have me, after everything my family has put you through? Yes. The word emerged as both a laugh and a sob. Yes, William, yes. He kissed her then, a proper kiss on the lips that sent gasps of shock rippling through the ballroom. It was scandalous. It was improper. It was the most wonderful moment of either of their lives. The crowd erupted into applause. Not everyone joined in, of course. Some guests maintained their disapproval, their rigid postures and pursed lips making clear their opinion of the entire display. But enough people clapped, enough people smiled, enough people recognized the genuine love on display to create a wave of support that swept through the room. The Dowager Duchess stood alone, isolated in a sea of approval, her social position crumbling around her as the guests she had counted as allies turned their backs on her controlling behavior. Lady Genevieve Hartington herself approached William and Lydia with a warm smile. "Your Grace, Miss Fairmont. May I be the first to offer my sincere congratulations. Yours is clearly a love match of the finest order." "Thank you, Lady Hartington. I should like to host your engagement dinner, if you would permit me the honor." "We would be delighted." More guests approached, offering congratulations and well wishes, carefully avoiding the rigid figure of the Dowager Duchess as though she had become invisible. The social tide had turned, and everyone present understood it. William spotted his mother standing alone near the entrance, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and for a moment something flickered in her expression that might have been pain. Then she turned and swept from the ballroom, her exit as dramatic as her entrance had been. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Wedding preparations began in earnest, with Lady Hartington graciously offering her assistance in navigating the social complexities that remained. Invitations were sent, arrangements were made, and the date was set for 3 weeks hence at St. George's Church in Hanover Square. The Dowager Duchess sent no word to her son. The doors of Moreland House remained closed to him, the servants instructed to turn him away if he attempted to call. She had made her position clear, and William accepted it with a heaviness in his heart that Lydia's love could only partially ease. "She may come around," Lydia said one evening as they sat together in the modest drawing room of her aunt's lodgings. "Time heals many wounds." "Perhaps." William stared into the fire, his expression troubled. "But I fear my mother's wounds are of her own making, and she seems disinclined to acknowledge them. She raised you alone after your father died. That cannot have been easy. She raised me to be her puppet, controlled by her strings, dancing to her tune." He turned to look at Lydia, his gray eyes soft in the firelight. "You freed me from those strings. I will always be grateful for that, whatever happens with my mother. I did nothing. You freed yourself. I freed myself because you showed me it was possible, because you showed me what life could be like when it is lived for joy rather than duty." He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I love you, Lydia Fairmont. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person. And in 3 weeks, I will stand before God and man and vow to love you for the rest of my life. That vow will be the truest thing I have ever spoken. I love you too, William." She leaned her head against his shoulder, her hair tickling his chin. "Though I confess, I sometimes still cannot believe this is real, that you chose me over everything your mother could offer. You are everything my mother could not offer." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "You are freedom and joy and love without conditions. You are exactly what I need, and I thank God every day that you agreed to dance with me at that ridiculous ball." It was a lovely ball. It was a tedious exercise in social obligation, but it brought me to you, so I shall forever speak well of it. She laughed, that musical sound he had come to treasure above all others. "You are becoming remarkably romantic, Your Grace. I had an excellent teacher." The wedding morning dawned bright and clear, as though the heavens themselves had decided to smile upon the union of William Talbot and Lydia Fairmont. St. George's Church was filled to capacity, the pews crowded with guests who had decided that love matches were more fashionable than arranged ones, and that the new Duchess of Moreland would be a delightful addition to their social circles. The church itself had been decorated with white roses and trailing ivy, the ancient stone walls softened by flowers that filled the air with sweet fragrance. Morning light streamed through the stained glass windows, casting patterns of colored light across the flagstones like scattered jewels. William's hands trembled slightly as his valet assisted him with the final adjustments to his cravat. He had dressed with more care than he had ever taken for any previous occasion, wanting everything to be perfect for this day when his life would change forever. "Nervous, Your Grace?" his valet inquired with a knowing smile. "Terrified," William admitted, "though not of marriage itself, only of somehow failing to be worthy of the extraordinary woman who has agreed to share my life. If I may say so, Your Grace, the young lady seems to believe you are worthy enough. Perhaps you should trust her judgment." It was sound advice, and William carried it with him as he took his place at the altar. William stood at the altar, his heart pounding with a mixture of joy and nervousness that made it difficult to stand still. His best man, an old school friend named Lord Edward Merrywell, stood beside him offering silent support. Then the doors opened, and Lydia appeared. She wore a gown of ivory silk that caught the light streaming through the stained glass windows, transforming her into something almost otherworldly. Orange blossoms crowned her dark hair, and her violet eyes shone with tears of happiness as she processed down the aisle on her father's arm. William felt his own eyes grow moist as she approached. This extraordinary woman, this kind and gentle soul who had seen him truly for the first time in his life, was about to become his wife. The magnitude of his good fortune nearly overwhelmed him. Sir Edward Fairmont placed his daughter's hand in William's with a gruff nod that contained multitudes of emotion. The vicar began the ceremony, his sonorous voice filling the ancient church with words that had joined couples for centuries. When it came time for the vows, William spoke them with a fervor that left no doubt of his sincerity. "I, William Arthur Edward Talbot, take thee, Lydia, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Lydia's voice trembled slightly as she recited her own vows, but her eyes never left his face. "I, Lydia Catherine Fairmont, take thee, William, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." The ring slid onto her finger. It was not the Moreland heirloom, which remained locked away in his mother's safe, but a new band of gold William had purchased himself, a simple, perfect circle representing a future unburdened by the past. The vicar pronounced them man and wife, and William kissed his bride with a tenderness that drew happy sighs from the assembled guests. As they turned to face the congregation, William's eye was caught by a figure seated in the rear pew, half hidden by a pillar. His mother had come. The Dowager Duchess sat alone, her face pale and drawn, watching the proceedings with an expression William could not quite decipher. Regret, perhaps, or sorrow, or simply the exhaustion of someone who had fought a battle and lost. Their eyes met across the crowded church. William inclined his head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, if not reconciliation. The Dowager Duchess hesitated, then nodded in return. It was not much. It was not forgiveness or acceptance or anything approaching the relationship they might have had if circumstances had been different. But it was something, a thread of connection that had not been entirely severed. The wedding breakfast was held at Lady Hartington's townhouse, a magnificent affair that everyone would be talking about for weeks. The newly married Duke and Duchess of Moreland received congratulations from a seemingly endless stream of guests, their hands aching from being shaken and their faces sore from smiling. Late in the afternoon, when the festivities had begun to wind down, a servant approached William with a message. "Your Grace, there is a lady who wishes to speak with you. She is waiting in the small drawing room." He knew who it was before he opened the door. The Dowager Duchess stood by the window, her back to him, her posture still regal despite the evident weariness in her frame. She turned at the sound of his entrance, and William was startled to see tears on her cheeks. "Mother, I owe you an apology." The words emerged stiffly, as though dragged from some resistant place deep within her. "I owe both you and your wife an apology." "Yes, you do." She flinched at his bluntness, but did not retreat. "I behaved abominably toward Miss Fairmont, toward the Duchess of Moreland." A small, bitter laugh. "I have spent my entire life believing I knew what was best for you. I convinced myself that my control was protection, that my manipulation was guidance, that my cruelty was correction. It was not. No, it was not." She finally met his eyes, and William saw something in their depths he had never seen before. Vulnerability. "Your father was not a strong man, William. He needed someone to manage him, to direct him, to make decisions he was incapable of making himself. When he died and left you so young, I assumed you would be the same. That you would need me to guide you, to control you, to shape you into the man you needed to be. I am not my father. I know that now. I knew it the moment you stood in Lady Hartington's ballroom and defied me before all of society." Her voice cracked. "It was then I realized that my power over you meant nothing if I did not have your respect. I have lost you, William. I have lost you through my own blindness and cruelty, and I do not know how to get you back." William stood in silence for a long moment, considering his mother as though seeing her for the first time. He saw the fear that had driven her behavior, the genuine if misguided love that had motivated her control. He saw a woman who had been so afraid of losing her son that she had pushed him away with both hands. "You have not lost me, Mother." The words emerged slowly, carefully chosen. "But things must change between us. I am not a child to be directed. I am not a puppet to be controlled. And Lydia is my wife, whom you will treat with the respect her position deserves. I know. I understand." The Dowager Duchess drew a shaky breath. "Your wife is a remarkable woman, William. I saw it even when I tried to deny it. The way she maintained her dignity under my attacks, the way she supported you without trying to control you, the way she loves you without conditions or expectations. She is everything I failed to be as a mother. Then learn from her. It is not too late." Hope flickered in the Dowager Duchess's eyes. "You would give me that chance? After everything I have done?" "Everyone deserves a second chance, Mother, even those who have hurt us most deeply." He crossed the room and took her hands in his. "Lydia believes in forgiveness. She believes in the power of love to transform even the most damaged hearts. I would like to believe she is right." Tears flowed freely down the Dowager Duchess's cheeks now, her legendary composure finally shattered. "I am sorry, William. I am so sorry for everything. I know." He drew her into an embrace, the first genuine one they had shared since his childhood. "I forgive you, Mother. But you must prove that you have truly changed. Not to me, but to Lydia. She is the one who bore the brunt of your cruelty. I will. I promise I will." There was a soft knock at the door, and Lydia entered. She stopped short at the sight of William and his mother, her violet eyes widening with uncertainty. "I am sorry. I did not mean to intrude." "You are not intruding." William held out his hand to her. "My mother has something she wishes to say to you." The Dowager Duchess turned to face her new daughter-in-law, and for the first time in their acquaintance, her expression held no trace of contempt or cruelty. "Your Grace, I owe you an apology that words alone cannot adequately express." She sank into a deep curtsy, a gesture of respect that left Lydia visibly startled. "I treated you shamefully. I said things that were cruel and false. I allowed my fear of losing my son to transform me into someone I do not recognize and do not wish to be. Your Grace, please rise. Lydia moved forward, taking the older woman's hands and gently urging her upright. There is no need for such formality between family. You are more gracious than I deserve. I am offering what I hope you will offer in return, forgiveness and a chance to begin again. Lydia smiled, and the warmth in that expression seemed to reach something cold and rigid in the Dowager Duchess's heart. William loves you, despite everything. I would not wish to be the cause of lasting division between mother and son. You are not the cause. I am. The Dowager Duchess's voice cracked again. But I am grateful for your willingness to let me try to make amends. William watched the two women, the mother who had controlled his life and the wife who had freed him, and felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for as long as he could remember. We should return to our guests, he said gently. But I believe we can find time in the coming weeks for family dinners and conversation, if everyone is willing. I would like that very much, Lydia said. As would I, the Dowager Duchess agreed. The three of them returned to the wedding breakfast together, and if the guests noticed the redness in the Dowager Duchess's eyes or the new warmth in her manner toward the bride, they were tactful enough not to comment. The honeymoon was spent at a small estate in Kent, not far from Lydia's childhood home. William had wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere they could be alone without the pressures of society or the shadow of family conflict. The modest house, surrounded by rolling green hills and fragrant gardens, was perfect. The first morning, William woke to find his wife already up, standing at the window in her dressing gown, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. He joined her silently, wrapping his arms around her from behind, and together they watched the new day begin. I could stay here forever, she murmured, leaning back against his chest. Just the two of us, away from all the noise and judgment of London. We could, if you wished. The ducal properties are numerous. We need not return to society until you are ready. She turned in his arms, her violet eyes soft with love. That is a tempting offer, but I think we must eventually return. We cannot hide from the world forever, and I should like to prove to your mother's former allies that I am not the scheming adventuress they were told to expect. You are remarkable. I am merely practical, and deeply in love with my husband, which makes me wish to support him in all his endeavors, even those that require enduring tedious social functions. I do not deserve you. We established long ago that neither of us deserves the other. We shall simply have to spend the rest of our lives trying to prove ourselves worthy. They spent their days walking through the countryside, reading poetry to each other by firelight, and discovering the depth of connection that was possible when two people loved without reservation or condition. They spoke of their hopes for the future, of the family they would build together, of the ways they would raise their children differently from how they had been raised. I want our sons to know they can choose their own paths, William said one evening as they sat on a hill overlooking the sunset, and our daughters to know they are capable of anything they set their minds to. And I want all of them to know that love is not control, Lydia added, that true love sets you free rather than binding you. We shall teach them together. He pulled her close, her head resting against his shoulder. We shall make all the mistakes our parents made and invent entirely new ones of our own, and we shall muddle through as best we can. That sounds wonderful. It does it not? They returned to London after a month to find that the social landscape had shifted considerably in their absence. The Dowager Duchess, true to her word, had publicly acknowledged her previous behavior as inappropriate and had made clear her support for her son's marriage. The most persistent gossips, deprived of their primary source of discord, had moved on to fresher scandals. More importantly, the relationship between William and his mother had begun to heal. The Dowager Duchess called regularly at the newly renovated Moorland house, where William and Lydia had taken up residence. She participated in family dinners without attempting to dominate the conversation. She asked Lydia's opinions and actually listened to the answers. It was not a complete transformation. Old habits died hard, and there were moments when the Dowager Duchess's controlling nature resurfaced. But Lydia handled these moments with grace and firmness, redirecting without confrontation, and William learned to support his wife while still maintaining connection with his mother. A year after the wedding, their first child arrived, a healthy son with his father's gray eyes and his mother's dark hair. The Dowager Duchess wept upon holding her grandson for the first time, and the tears were unmistakably those of joy. "I made so many mistakes with your father," she whispered to the tiny bundle in her arms. "I will not make them with you. I will love you freely and let you grow into whoever you are meant to be." The child, whom they had named Frederick Edward after both grandfathers, seemed to regard his grandmother with the solemn intensity peculiar to newborns, as though assessing her sincerity. Lydia smiled at the image they made together, the formidable Dowager Duchess reduced to cooing sounds and gentle rocking. "He has his father's eyes," the Dowager observed, wonder evident in her voice. "And your chin, I think, Lydia. A stubborn chin. He will need it in this world. He will have his grandmother to teach him the ways of society," Lydia replied gently. "Who better to guide him through the complexities of the ton than one who has navigated them for so long?" The Dowager looked up, surprise evident on her features. "You would trust me with his education?" "I would trust you with many things, Mother. You have earned that trust over the past months." It was the first time Lydia had called her mother rather than Your Grace. The Dowager's eyes filled with tears again, and she did not bother to wipe them away. "I shall try to deserve that trust. Every day I shall try." William watched his mother with his son, saw the tenderness she was capable of when she allowed herself to be vulnerable, and felt the last vestiges of old resentment fade away. The transformation in his mother had not been immediate or complete. There had been setbacks and moments of regression, times when the old controlling instincts had resurfaced and required gentle but firm correction. But she had persisted in her efforts, driven by a genuine desire to repair the damage she had caused and to build a new relationship with her son and daughter-in-law. Watching her now, William felt a profound gratitude for Lydia's insistence on giving his mother a second chance. Lesser women might have demanded permanent estrangement, might have held fast to justified grievances and refused to allow the Dowager back into their lives. But Lydia had understood something William had been too close to see, that his mother's cruelty had sprung from fear, and that fear could be healed through love and patience. Later that evening, after the Dowager Duchess had departed and the baby slept peacefully in his nursery, William and Lydia sat together in the drawing room. The fire crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and outside the window, London glowed with the warm light of street lanterns and possibility. "Are you happy?" William asked, the question both simple and profound. Lydia turned to look at him, her violet eyes luminous in the firelight. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible." "Even with my impossible mother?" "Your mother is changing, slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. That is more than many people ever manage. She hurt you terribly." "She did, but she has also worked hard to make amends." Lydia took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened, William. It is about choosing not to let the past poison the future." "When did you become so wise?" "I learned it from you." She smiled, that luminous expression that still, after a year of marriage, made his heart skip. "You taught me that people can change when love gives them reason to. You changed for me. Your mother is changing for both of us. I changed because you showed me who I could be." He raised her hand to his lips. "Before you, I was merely existing, following paths laid out by others, never questioning whether they led anywhere I wanted to go. You gave me the courage to find my own way. We found it together. Yes, "We did." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, surrounded by love and warmth and the promise of the future they would build together, William Talbot finally understood what it meant to be truly happy. It had taken him 24 years to find his courage. 24 years to break free from the chains his mother had wrapped around him since childhood. 24 years to discover that love was not a weakness to be controlled, but a strength to be embraced. But now that he had found it, he would never let it go. He thought of the boy he had been before that fateful ball at Lady Sefton's. The obedient son who had never questioned, never challenged, never wanted anything his mother had not first approved. That boy seemed like a stranger now, a pale shadow of the man he had become. Lydia had changed everything, not by trying to change him, but by loving him exactly as he was and believing he could be more. She had seen past the Duke, past the dutiful son, past all the masks he had worn for so long he had forgotten they were masks at all. She had seen William, and she had loved what she found. That love had given him the strength to stand up to his mother, to choose his own path, to become the man he was meant to be rather than the puppet his mother had tried to create. And now, with his wife in his arms, and his son sleeping peacefully upstairs, and his mother slowly learning to love without controlling, William Talbot understood that the greatest victory was not in defeating his mother, but in helping her find her own freedom from the fear that had driven her cruelty. They were all of them imperfect souls learning to grow, people trying to love each other as best they could. There would be more conflicts ahead, more moments of difficulty and doubt, more occasions when old patterns tried to reassert themselves. But they would face those challenges together, as a family, bound not by control or manipulation or duty, but by something far more powerful: love, true love, the kind that sets you free rather than binding you, the kind that sees you truly and loves you anyway, the kind that gives you the courage to become the best version of yourself. William had found that love against all odds. He had fought for it against his mother's opposition and society's judgment and his own deeply ingrained habits of obedience. And in the end, love had won. It always did, he thought, tightening his arms around his wife. When it was real. When it was true. When two people chose each other not because duty demanded it, or family required it, or society expected it, but simply because they could not imagine facing the world without each other. That was the lesson he would teach his son. That was the legacy he would leave behind. Not titles or properties or social position, but the simple truth that love was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Because in the end, love was the only thing that truly mattered. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end of this story. If these moments of love, courage, and redemption touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us continue creating stories of resilience, hope, and the transforming power of true love.